Right, hello there. I'm from Curtin & Co, and a number of you have been in contact with us, so thanks very much for that already. Just before we start the formal presentation, I know this is obviously a little bit different to a face-to-face event, so I'm just going to try and explain the software to begin with, and then we will obviously go straight into the presentation. So lots of people are already joined us in our virtual room, so thank you very much for that. Clearly there's a lot of interest, so that's very positive and very good. So if you look on the screen, it's step 1. So if you put your device in full screen mode, that will be useful for you, so you can see as much as you can on your screen. So if you do that now, that would be useful. Thank you very much. Step 2 is probably the most important step. So this is, we want as much feedback throughout the presentation, and in order to provide us feedback or to ask many questions, this is how you do it. So on the right hand side of your screen, there's a question marks box. If you click on that, a little pop-up will appear, and then you can ask us as many questions as you'd like throughout the session. We want as many questions as possible, so please use this feature. What is going to happen is obviously we're going to do a formal presentation, and we will monitor the questions throughout. Then there will be a Q&A session. I will feed the project team the questions that have already come in at the end of the session, and everyone's question will be replied to after the session today. So rest assured, please ask as many questions as you can, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. But today is very much feedback exercise. We want to hear as much as possible from you. Step 3, so there will be a lot of information given to you today. There is a handout section, and that's on your right hand screen as well. In the handout section is a copy of the exhibition banners which will be shown today. So again, you can review these in your own time. Also, we will be sending round a copy of the exhibition slides after the session, so you'll be able to see them via email as well. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Paul, who will welcome and start the formal presentation this evening.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much to everybody for coming along this evening. We really do welcome your involvement and your attendance this evening, because it gives us an opportunity to feed back to you on the proposals that are coming forward for Shinfield Studios. And this evening, really, we're pleased to update you on where we've got to about the amazing opportunity that we genuinely believe is coming to Shinfield. And to begin with, the process, as Dave says, is that we would like to capture your questions to answer offline later, and we'll go through the general themes of questions later. But we'd like to present to you this evening, and we'd like to talk you through the proposals that we feel are very important, particularly the application that has just been submitted for the opportunity that has arisen just recently, to kick the whole process off. What I'd like to do now, what I'm going to try to do just to begin the presentation this evening, is to show you a video that will give you an idea of the application that's just been submitted, and will give you an idea of where we're hoping to start this journey, this project of developing Shinfield Studios. I'm now going to see if I can make my screen switch to my player, and then we will press play for a little bit. You won't hear the sound, unfortunately, but if you follow the video, it will give you a fly through of the proposal that we're now looking at. I'll press play. So I hope that gives you a slight idea from a video perspective of the fly-through that we're trying to show to depict what's coming as a part of the first application that's been made for Shinfield Studios. I'd like to introduce the team to you this evening, if I can start by introducing both Nick Smith and Ian Johnson, who are the managing directors of Shinfield Studios. Gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Smith, and as Paul says, I'm joint managing director along with Ian. And we're delighted to try and bring this exciting project to you. One of the questions you might have is, what is our background and why are we experienced enough to do this? Just very briefly, I've had about 30 years in the film and television sector. I had nearly 18 years at Pinewood, where I was a director of Pinewood and was responsible for the growth of Pinewood and the growth of Shepperton, and also built a number of film studios internationally. So I've been responsible for construction of film studios in places like Toronto and in America, in Malaysia, and also in a smaller facility down in Cardiff in Wales. So quite a lot of experience in designing and managing film studio infrastructure. So just a very bit of brief background. And if I can hand over to Ian.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Like Nick, I've probably got about 30 years experience as well, but in a broader corporate sense. I'm a chartered accountant by background and have been a director on public company boards and private company boards for many years. My experience is slightly more general. I've worked for many branded businesses with large property portfolios, both in the UK and in major overseas markets such as the US, Canada, Europe and the Far East. I spend most of my time dealing with business strategy, with corporate finance, but I also get my hands dirty in things like logistics and operations. So that's me.
Thank you both. Nick's now going to take us through the presentation to start with. Hand over to you, Nick, to start the presentation.
Thank you, Paul. So we've got a very short presentation and just some of the key points to take you through. So as we note, first of all, the industry is a major economic driver. And just interestingly, film and television was responsible for stopping the UK going into recession back in 2019. If we look at where inward investment currently is, it's a significant sector for the country. And in 2019, there was 3.6 billion of inward investment into the UK. And as noted here, that was up about 16% on the previous year. Now, that in itself was up nearly 20% on the year before. Obviously, 2020 was a difficult year and numbers were down to about 2.4 billion. So still 2/3 of the previous high of 2019. But I think more interestingly, 50% of all that expenditure was in the last quarter of 2020. So despite the current situation with COVID, the film and television production industry is actually booming. But there is an acute global shortage of prime studio space to meet this incessant demand that we're currently seeing from those engaged in the content creation race. Now, this is currently spearheaded by brands that you're probably aware of, like Disney, Netflix, Amazon, and Apple, and they all want to come to the UK. The UK is seen as the #1 global destination to create this premium content. But further inward investment opportunities are limited at the moment by scarcity of production facilities. And not surprisingly, there is currently a race to build film and television studios right across the UK to satisfy this current and expected future demand. And this is why we really want to put Shinfield on the map and bring part of this, this growing boom to the area and benefit from the economic benefit that will be derived accordingly. And just to put some more things into perspective, with 2020 and the problems that the industry has had facing COVID, I mean, at the moment there are estimated to be about 10 million global screen sector jobs that have been lost. And this in turn transfers to about $145 billion worth of economic impact. And that's just the first half of 2020. So there's a huge amount to make up on. But the good news for the UK is because of where we are globally and with the advanced rollout of the vaccine at the moment, we are probably the best poised country globally to take advantage when production picks up. And again, whilst production levels are increasing, the most dramatic growth, not surprisingly, is actually in the area of television, so scripted television. So the likes of programs like Netflix's The Crown or Game of Thrones, things that you'll be aware of, have just grown phenomenally in the past. It's not even the past decade, it's really in the past 8 years. And the number of television shows of that ilk have actually more than doubled in less than 10 years. An interesting statistic at the moment is that Netflix on their own are actually producing more television shows, this is for 2019, than the entire television industry in 2005. But the challenge that you have with that is that clearly we haven't kept up with film studio infrastructure. So whilst they want to make these shows, there isn't really anywhere for these to be produced at the moment, and hence there is this real need to create more infrastructure. The other thing that the UK has going in its favour is really that it's a centre of excellence for visual effects and post-production, and this is really located and centred in Soho and the southeast of the UK, and that in itself drives more production to the UK. Now, Ian and I looked long and hard to try and find the right location to build a new studio. And the Thames, we looked at the Thames Valley Science Park, and it is a fabulous location. It is slightly further out of London than a lot of producers want to be, but really this is about redesigning the map, redesigning the production infrastructure, and giving more opportunities to people that currently aren't in that quadrant of the Pinewood and the Shepperton and the Leavesden studios, which really is the heart of the film industry today. So we're trying to extend the boundaries and give more opportunities to more people that might not currently be involved in the industry. And it was important for us to have a partner like the University of Reading to work with. And we're working with them to try and create skills and talent development opportunities once the studio's open fully. And really, we don't want this to be at just a graduate level. We want to be working with talent pipeline that could, in theory, start from primary schools all the way up to postgraduate. But what we're trying to do in the next few weeks and months is really the first step of the journey that we're on. And I'm going to show you some of some more images now and some of the plans, and share some more information with you. So, Paul, if we could turn to the next slide. And really, this just gives you an idea of the studios once they are fully built out. And this is a view that you'll see from the M4. Now, in the top of the picture, there is a slightly different shaded colour of building, which is more brown than the grey. This is actually the British Museum. So those buildings exist currently. And what you see in front of that is the proposed full development of Shinfield Studios, which will take several years to build out. If we move on, Paul, the next slide should take us from at ground level. So there's a CGI that shows you the building on the left is the current Gateway 1 building. And again, it just shows you a slightly different view of the buildings, but from ground level. And moving on then to the next image, it just shows you from the other side away from M4, but again, an overview of the studios once they're built out. Moving on, again, this is just a two-dimensional of the entire plan. So this is not what we're really the detail that we're talking about tonight, but just to give you a flavour of the full plan. Now, once the studios are built out in their entirety, it'll be about 1 million square feet of stages and workshops and production offices. That translates to about 95,000 square meters. On the code there, you can see that the mustard colour is really the film stages, the blue is the workshops, the red is the offices. What we haven't put on that key is there are 3 green boxes that you might be able to see. The one towards the bottom left, that's going to be a new cinema and post-production complex. And the idea here is that we'll be working on post-production on the films and the television shows that are at the studios during the week. But the intention is at the weekends, we can hopefully open the doors and be able to open up the cinema to local residents. The small green block in the middle is really the security at the heart of the studios. And the top is the catering facility. So as I say, that is the overview, and that we would hope to have all of that built out by the end of 2023. But if we turn to the next slide, Paul, and really this is just shows you what we're trying to do in the very short term. So this is the application that we've just submitted, and again, the yellow boxes are the stages, the blue boxes are the workshops. And you might recognise the layout there of the blue and the yellow boxes from the fly-through that we saw at the very beginning. And the fly-through has actually been plotted with accurate dimensions to the centimetre. But essentially, the yellow boxes there will give us 4 film sound stages of about 20,000 square feet each, and the workshops there are also about 20,000 square feet each. So in total, we're trying to, in the very short term, construct about 160,000 square feet. Now, why have we done this? Because originally our intention was to put in a planning application this spring for the entirety of the scheme. The reason we brought this part early is because we were approached by a significant Hollywood-based film studio just before Christmas that has a production that they'd like to bring into the UK, but at the moment they can't because there is no space in the UK. So effectively they would take this production back to the United States. So we have been working very closely with Woking Borough Council and the university to try and fast track this application, because we need to have these facilities open by September this year. We have to commit before the end of this month to the production, and we have to start construction before the end of this month. As noted there on the 4 sound stages and the 4 workshops. The offices won't be built in this phase because we can use some offices currently that are in the Gateway 1 building. But we have a real opportunity to get Shinfield onto the map now and start with a very significant production that everybody will be familiar with, that will start this year. Now, because we're all running so quickly at this one, there will be limited opportunities for training at this point, but the whole point is that it gets it on the map, it gets the scheme going, and we can put things in place that have real employment benefits moving forward. So this is the reason that we've put in a temporary planning application, and we are hoping for a decision in the next few weeks. Paul, if you'd like to take us to the next slide, I think I'm handing over to Barton Wilmore on this.
Nick Patterson-Neald is from Barton Wilmore, and Nick will now take us through just the 2 photo montages here. Nick.
Good evening. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nick. The images that you see are photo montages. They are supporting information to the landscape and visual appraisal, which supports the planning application that we've submitted. The visual impact of the proposal has been very carefully addressed through, first of all, the situation and the siting, if you like, of the stages in the central part of the site, together with tree planting and hedgerow planting, which supplements and complements the existing landscape structure around the margins of the site. The buildings are proposed, as you've seen in the video already, with a dark or recessive colour, following in very much a similar fashion to the British Museum proposal, and many of you will have seen that emerging in recent months, which allows that building to be situated very comfortably within the surrounding landscape. The images that you see on screen are a before and after shot, so the top image is as it is at the moment, and this is looking north from the track which links Old House Farm to Hall Farm on the other side of the Loddon, and in the foreground a sort of limey green colour are the buildings at Old House Farm, the existing buildings there, and on the image below you can see there is a red line, if you can picture that sort of 2/5 from the left, as you go left to right, there's a red line in the sky which depicts the extent of the site that we're looking at. And when you compare the two, almost directly above the track, you can just see the top of the stage building in a sort of darker colour. But what you do see, however, is that is situated comfortably within the landscape and below the tree level surrounding that site. And if you click to the next slide, please, Paul. This is then a view from Cutbush Lane, not too far west of the overbridge at its end over the M4 as it goes into Early, and it's looking westwards or southwestwards. And what you see in the foreground on the top image is the British Museum building, which is, as you know, well under construction. And in the image below, you see the introduction of the proposed temporary stages, and again you do get a very slight glimpse amongst the vegetation, and of course these pictures have been taken in the winter and show the trees without tree cover. So again, these demonstrate how successfully I think the buildings sit in the surrounding landscape. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Nick. Moving on now, we want to consider some of the things that we hope you will take information from this evening as prompts for thoughts about the development. talking about engaging with the local community and what we've done so far, the jobs and the post-COVID recovery, talk a little bit about transport and site. Sustainability is important, and then just pick up some of the key benefits that we think come from the proposals that are now before the council. And to begin with, we just wanted to reiterate the amount of consultation that we are undertaking, but also that we intend to continue to undertake. As you will remember, last year, the launch of the idea received significant press coverage across national newspapers, national media, local and regional media, and that was about promoting the proposals of the film studio. Very important that we met with local authorities to give them a sense of what was being proposed and where this was coming from. And a significant number of meetings took place last year to just basically introduce the concept, introduce the thoughts. That led to meetings with parish councils and other stakeholder groups, and it began a process of the conversation that we are having with you. Also, moving to this year, we started to have the conversation around these immediate proposals with both parish councils and the local authorities, as you would imagine. And we have publicly gone out to well nearly 7,000, nearly 10,000 properties with a newsletter that you will have received to inform, but also this evening, the exhibition on these particular proposals. But there will be more consultation than just this. We will be engaged in a process of consultation over the coming months to talk to people about the proposals as they develop and to take you on the journey with us. We very much want to take you on this journey with us along all of the questions you might raise this evening that we can answer, but also the points in communication that we answer along the way as the proposals take shape and form and go before the authority for planning permission. But here this evening, we're talking about the temporary application, as Nick has outlined, as our starting point, the first phase, if you like, to really kickstart the opportunity of the level of inward investment, the level of jobs, the level of COVID recovery that we could achieve from the development of these studios in Shinfield. And it's important as well to note the name change. It is Shinfield Studios. We very much want to put Shinfield on the map, give Shinfield its recognition that these are Shinfield Studios. Moving forward to talk about jobs and local skills, can I bring Nick back in to talk about this area? Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So, as I touched on, if we're successful with the application, there'll be about over 200 jobs in construction in the very short term. The size of the production that we're bringing in September will require between 500 to 600 jobs. As I say, because of the time scale, some of the majority of those will already be with experienced production people, but there will undoubtedly be local opportunities even in the very short term. And I think even beyond that, as I say, the local economic benefit that will derive from it when a production comes in of the scale we're talking about, when they're in full swing, they will spend millions of pounds per week when they're in production. And even if at the very early stages, only a small percentage of this trickles down locally, it still has a significant local economic benefit. And this is the opportunity that we're trying to bring. So we will, in the longer term, be wanting to get young people from schools and colleges to get involved in developing opportunities with them for the studios. And it's across a variety of trades, whether it's from carpentry to plastering, to set decoration, to visual effects, to special effects. There are so many opportunities in working in a film studio, and it's in our interest, and we want to hire local talent to work on productions that we're going to be responsible for. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Nick. Talking about transport, I'd like to bring in Peter Jones from ALP, who are advising the project, and Peter will talk us through some of the key points relating to transport around the temporary application. Peter, can I bring you in, please?
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everybody. Yes, one of the key considerations in terms of transport is obviously trying to provide maximum opportunities to encourage people to travel by means other than the car. Now clearly the science park is in a good location in terms of accessibility to the M4 motorway corridor, but it also has plenty of advantages in terms of existing connectivity for pedestrian, cycle and public transport networks. There's a good level of cycle facilities that have been recently implemented along the Eastern Relief Road, over the new motorway bridge towards the gyratory to the north, as well as the existing bridge that was retained for pedestrian, cycles and buses. There's also the cycle-only bridge along Cutbush Lane into Lower Earley, and the pedestrian and cycle facilities that link and route through towards Shinfield Village, connecting to the facilities within the new residential areas as well. So it offers a good opportunity there with the existing infrastructure to accommodate pedestrian and cycle trips, and it's a similar theme with public transport as well. The south of M4 bus service has been introduced over the last few years, and frequency was ramping up, although it's taken a hit because of COVID, like every other bus service in the area. But hopefully there will be an end in sight where we can get back to the frequencies that were achieved towards the beginning of last year. But that bus service offers good connections through towards Reading Centre, and also White Knights campus area, and it also, as it builds out with the remainder of the housing in the area, will in future offer connections towards the park and ride facility and Green Park and the rail station. So there is an existing bus service that will improve over time. So again, that ticks a very good box in terms of infrastructure that is already in place to accommodate trips by modes other than the car, which is a key consideration. In terms of the highway access, of course the Science Park benefits from the Eastern Relief Road, which was the big scheme that was introduced to relieve some of the traffic from Shinfield Village and facilitate the development in the area, including the Science Park. So the vehicle access towards the studios can be achieved from the Eastern Relief Road, directly from the roundabout that's in place. And importantly, one of the key considerations for the temporary application that was being referred to is that all vehicular movements towards that parcel of land south of Cutbush Lane would be routed through the Science Park area itself, and therefore wouldn't need to use the southern section of Cutbush Lane onto the priority junction that is onto the Eastern Relief Road. So all the trips can be catered through the existing Science Park, and then utilise the main access roundabout for the Science Park. I've lost the connection, but I think I can remember from the slides. But perhaps it's the next slide, please, Paul.
Yes.
Thank you.
You got the next slide, Peter.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the screen up. But in terms of the key theme, which is an important consideration, is the level of trip generation associated with the proposals, and a factor to consider is that I think the overall footprint of the temporary application that's currently in place is about a fifth of the full footprint of the Science Park that was already consented as part of phase 2 for business use. And of course, the nature of the development is very different from the business use that was originally anticipated at the Science Park. It's much more bespoke. It's got a lower density because of the stages and workshops rather than more conventional office space, and that does lead to less vehicular activity, particularly on a day-to-day basis when it's not operating at full capacity, and even when it does, based on the patterns of trips that we can see from other studios like Shepperton and Pinewood, the profile of trips throughout the day is certainly less peaky, is the way I would describe it. So it's a much more flatter profile throughout the day and much less pronounced in the peak. And on that basis, the pattern and profile of trips is going to be different than has already been consented at the Science Park, and in many respects it will be lower in terms of the trip generation during the peak hours, where the network was at its most constrained. In terms of the temporary application, the level of trip generation lies well within the envelope of trips that were already consented within the science park. So it's more of a consideration as we move forward for the full proposals. And what we will be doing is accessing Wokinham's traffic model and making sure that we properly reflect the different pattern of trips and the different profile of trips throughout the day, just to compare exactly what has been consented in the area and what the level of trip generation would be with the full scheme in place. But as I say, with reference to for the temporary application that is currently before Wokingham Council, the level of trip generation, it's about a tenth of the level of trips that were allowed for within the phase 2 science park, which has already got planning consent. I'm sure there'll be questions which I can pick up later, but that's it for now. Thank you, Paul.
No, thanks, Peter. Thank you very much. Moving on to sustainability, we wanted to give you information here around the renewable sustainability of the proposal. Nick, do you want to come back in at this stage? Nick Patterson-Neild.
Thank you, Paul. As one would imagine, given the nature of the buildings, particularly the sound stages, they are very efficient, thermally efficient buildings, very well insulated because of obviously their intrinsic use. And therefore, we're very much focused on a fabric-first approach to reducing energy demand at source that will be needed for the development. The buildings will be very highly insulated in terms of their physical fabric, have very high air tightness. And also the industry as a whole has historically, one of the greater demands for energy has of course been lighting. But modern forms of light, particularly LED lighting, is significantly reducing the energy demand experienced by the film and TV industry. We'll be using solar panels on the roof of the stages, which will achieve a proportion of our energy use for the site. And the main proposals in time will look to explore the use of air source heat pumps to complement that. The use of water is actually quite low in terms of particularly hot water use. The modular construction of the buildings will enable a very effective and efficient use of resources and minimise the amount of waste, and also ensure the construction programme is very efficient and very time limited, and therefore minimising the effects of construction from the outset. There will be a series of improvements in terms of landscape planting and habitat creation, both within the site and also off-site, and that will enable us to achieve a biodiversity net gain, which planning policy now requires for all development. And Shinfield Studios will be working with the university to ensure those off-site measures in terms of habitat improvements, grassland planting and hedgerow planting and tree planting will achieve those benefits. As Peter's already mentioned, there are opportunities for sustainable travel to and from the site, and included within that, of course, will be the facilities to accommodate things such as cycles, but also electric charging points, which Peter's already mentioned. Connection in due course will be made for electricity to the grid, and of course, over time, the grid electricity is becoming more and more reliant on green sources, renewable sources, which are increasing proportionally over time. So that in high-level summary is the main principles of sustainability in terms of design and construction. Paul.
Thank you very much, Nick. Finally, moving on to benefits, we'd like to ask Ian if you'd come in and just talk us through what we consider to be the key benefits of the proposals for the temporary application that's now before the council.
Yes, I think this application starts a scheme which presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to develop a multimedia campus that will be known and respected right across the globe. The scale of the full scheme will rival studios such as that Nick's already mentioned, Pinewood, Shepperton, Warner Brothers, and there is no doubt that Shinfield Studios will stand alongside these as a favoured destination for film producers such as Disney, Netflix, Universal, Paramount, Sony, Amazon, and more. And of course, the advantage that we have over those other studios is designing and building to the very latest standards, embracing state-of-the-art digital technology. The temporary application has the capability to accommodate one major blockbuster production every year, which is what we have secured for this year. The average spend on a production like that is typically around £100 million, and it can be considerably higher. So the full scheme, when developed out, should be able to accommodate between 5 and 6 productions each year. So over £500 million of annual spend. Of course, not only does this translate into a vast array of direct job opportunities that we saw earlier, but it also creates very substantial spend in the local economy. For example, at local shops and restaurants, hotels, for materials and equipment and other services locally. The spillover is very considerable. And as many local residents will no doubt be aware, the studios down the road at Arborfield have created considerable local employment opportunities. And as Nick says, as we get going and as we get known and as the training programs take effect, we very much hope to have a significant local skills. As we emerge from what we hope is the final lockdown and we start to get the economy back on the road to recovery, these proposals really couldn't come at a better time. They do have the full support of the UK government, which has identified the creative industries along with technology and education as among the primary sectors in which Britain excels and will form a mainstay of the Great Britain campaign for those of you that are familiar with that. Finally, we are keen to ensure the development is undertaken in as sympathetic a way as possible, which means trying to reduce the carbon footprint, as Nick just explained, and to improve amenities for the local community, starting with local footpath and cycle network upgrades, and as part of the main scheme, as Nick explained, to include a cinema for local community use out of hours. So overall, a really exciting proposal, one that will put Shinfield well and truly on the global media radar. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Ian.
Actually, would you like me to finish off on this slide, Paul, just to explain number 6?
Please.
Yeah. So where are we? If you could just flick on one more, Paul.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry.
Where are we? We've, as was mentioned earlier, we submitted the application at the beginning of February, and we hope that it will be heard at the Council's Planning Committee on the 24th of March. As Nick explained earlier, we must start construction and site preparation straight away following approval, as the first buildings need to be occupied from the beginning of July. That's the workshops, and then the full scheme has to be finished by the beginning of September in order to meet the deadlines of this very, very exciting major franchise that I'm certain you will all be familiar with. We continue to work on the main application and intend to submit a planning application for that in the spring. And in the meantime, we would ask for your help. We hope that all of you who've joined us tonight can see what a fantastic opportunity this is. And if you have a little bit of time, we very much hope that you will use the link below to be able to put forward your support. Thanks very much, and I think we're over to questions now, Paul.
We are, thank you. Beyond questions this evening, if anybody has any further information they would like or would like to send questions in, these are the contact details to use. And in bringing this, forward this evening, we wanted to thank the following parties really for their support thus far. Obviously, the University of Reading, the Thames Valley Partnership, the Thames Valley Local Economic Partnership, which has been very supportive, the British Film Commission, which has been incredibly supportive, the Department for International Trade, and also we'd like to thank the support that we've received from Shinfield Parish Council for bringing the proposals forward. Clearly this evening you'll have a lot of thoughts on what you've heard and the questions. We will try to answer some of the questions this evening in some of the general themes, and the more specific questions we can have put to answers that we'll come back to you on. And this will be a dialogue, an ongoing dialogue. This isn't the end of the conversation we want to have with you. Yes, this application is incredibly important to start the process. We want to see the film studio deliver the jobs, deliver the inward investment, and give the economy the boost that we want to see for Shinfield and for Wokingham. But this is the start of a conversation with you about the other application coming forward as well. And in terms of that, how you can support the application is, if I just go back a slide, if you look at the bottom there, when you get the download the presentation, or if you go onto the council's website, and if you look up the application number, which is 210387, application 210387, you would have the opportunity to leave a comment in support of the application, and we would genuinely encourage you to do so to help us. Just answering the theme's questions this evening, we've got a team of people with us, team of the technical team. We've got Mark Owen and Nick Patterson-Neal, who are from Barton Wilmore, Peter Jones, who's already spoken from ALP. We've got Jason Levinhouse from Scott Brownrigg, who are the architects, and Nigel Franklin from the University of Reading, alongside Ian and Nick, to help drafting some of the questions, answer some of the questions, to do that this evening. If there are any letters of support that you would like to write, if you would like to use my contact details to write to me, and I can also help facilitate them being passed on to the local authority, if that's also an easier way of doing it. And we can send you the link. Very happy to send you the link to offer support. In terms of one of the questions that's been asked, and I think this is important in terms of some of the transport elements, Peter, if I could start with you. In terms of the bus network, how do we see the bus network growing? And in terms of the cycle bridge being made smart to allow peak traffic to pass through Lower Earley and the motorway junctions, how do you see the cycle networks being improved across the site?
Thank you, Paul. I'll start with in terms of the bus. The public transport strategy for the south of M4 area envisaged a bi-directional service that operates along the A33 and A327 corridors that effectively forms a clockwise and an anti-clockwise loop between basically Shinfield, Spencer's Wood and 3 Mile Cross at the southern end, going into Reading. Now that has been implemented on a phased basis over the past 3 or 4 years, and as I say, it was ramping up the frequency. We were achieving half-hour frequency and connecting into the residential areas in Spencer's Wood, and the next phase would have seen that loop completed, but for the abrupt halt in terms of COVID that happened effectively in March last year. So that has stalled the implementation of the bus service, but certainly that still remains the plan for the implementation, and there's Section 106 monies or monies that have been obtained from developers in the area as a result of developments that contribute towards that bus service and ensure it will be implemented. And a key stakeholder in that bus service is the University of Reading, that obviously maintains interested in the science park and making sure that them services are delivered into the future. So the bus service, whilst it's been stalled at the moment, there is opportunities to see and plans for that to come into full fruition. In terms of the cycle improvements in the area, I talked about how the existing infrastructure there is in place, and certainly that will cater for the temporary application. But there are opportunities certainly to improve cycle provision in the area. Just looking along Cutbush Lane and through the science park itself to make sure that the links are cycle friendly and wide. And there are opportunities to what I would say smarten up the area as you go over the bridge into Lower Earley, in terms of how it then connects into Lower Earley itself. The honest and truthful answer is that is something that will be looked at in detail as part of the full permanent application, and if it is deemed necessary or advantageous to promote improvements, then that will be something that will be discussed with the highway officers at Wokingham Borough Council.
Thank you, Peter. Nick Patterson, Neil, can I ask you to help us? We've got a question here regarding the flooding risk and the risk of how much water will be managed on the site. Could you help us understand that, please?
Yes, Paul, thank you. The whole of the site that we've applied for temporary permission lies in Zone 1, which is the lowest risk to flooding events. There is a comprehensive drainage strategy which has been submitted to support the planning application. That includes dealing with and attenuating the surface water runoff from the site, and there is the opportunity to convey that surface water into surrounding water courses, which attenuates down ultimately towards the River Loddon on the surrounding drainage ditch network. And we are required, as with all planning applications, to ensure that the surface water runoff exiting our site is effectively the same as the greenfield runoff rate which exists in its undeveloped state at the moment. And the practical opportunity through the drainage strategy is the use of cellular crate systems to store the water and to control its discharge at that suitable rate beyond the site. So the response from the planning authority has been positive to those proposals, and we're comfortable that the drainage will be adequately addressed within and beyond the site.
Thank you. Nick Smith, Ian Johnson, could I ask you to talk to us about the possibilities, the opportunities that there will be with schools and colleges, particularly for training and jobs, but also for schools and young people to, as it were, experience what you're building, experience the amazing opportunities that may come from what you're building. Could you give us an idea of how you see that developing and coming through the proposals?
Yes, I think, Ian, if I take this one first, but please jump in. I think it's very important for us to, we want to engage with everybody locally. I think the one thing that hasn't existed in the UK film industry is really opportunities for people to get involved at a local level. You know, certainly up until very recently, it was always seen as something that was maybe aspirational, and there was little engagement with local schools and colleges. You know, it's never really on the careers option list when you're thinking about leaving school and getting into the film industry. And you know, even a few years ago, it was almost who you knew rather than what you knew. And certainly from my time at Pinewood, I tried to do as much as I could to change that. And I want to carry on with that journey. I think it's incredibly important that youngsters get the opportunity and that we attract the best talent into the industry. And you know, it's all very well us saying that yes, you know, there's more in investment and to be had in the UK if we build more stages, but actually that's only half of the story, because we have to develop talent along with that. Otherwise, we can build the infrastructure and not have enough people. The two really go hand in hand. So we want to work very closely with local schools and local colleges to make sure that there is access for all and apprenticeships and training schemes. Obviously, with this temporary application, it is going to be fairly difficult. It's as Ian's referenced, it's just for one production. It's on a small scale, but as we expand and move forward, we can put some of these schemes into place. As we've referenced, this is the first part of the journey, but there's so much opportunity for everybody if we move forward with this. Ian, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think the only other thing, I think, Nick, you referenced the, you know, we are here in a joint venture with the University of Reading, and they have one of the, you know, most respected film and media courses in the country and perhaps internationally too. So there is a huge opportunity to partner with them on really bringing things forward there as well.
Leading on from that, sort of general themes of question really around the new business opportunities that might be there for businesses locally, the thoughts around what sort of jobs are we talking about on site that people may benefit from when the main scheme and the bigger scheme comes through, and also what's the sort of relationship like in the industry between part-time and full-time work? How does that break down in terms of the way the industry actually works?
Well, there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, a lot of people, most people rather, in the industry are going to be working on a freelance basis. So you know, people will get hired for the production. So whilst it's not necessarily part time, you will work for the duration of a production before you move on to another production. And this can be at any level from, and you know, by no means this is in any order, but this can, you know, this is including people in the construction side. So it can be from carpenters, plasterers, to set decorators, to, you know, there's a whole department that works on action vehicles and special effects. Then there's your visual effects, set decoration. You know, there are so many trades in this industry, but it's, as I say, you would tend to get hired for the production and then move on to another production. But in terms of where this filters out as well into the local economy, there are real opportunities for people engaged in all walks of life. So whether it's, you know, if you are, you know, a local restaurant or hotel, or in a taxi company, or if you supply, you know, if you work within a timber merchant, or, you know, there are so many different trades that support the industry, and there's so many opportunities for people to work in the industry. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but
that's important, I think, to give people a grasp of. And I think it's also, I'm trying to understand in terms of, because the inward investment is both, obviously this is the first step, this first proposal will attract what comes later as well. It's that meaningful landing.
This is the first stepping stone, really. You know, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is almost envisaging a journey that, you know, we should set out milestones that could be the next 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years. Because it takes an awful long time for this type of infrastructure and facilities to develop properly. If you think about, you know, if you look at a studio like Pinewood, it's been there for nearly 100 years. And, you know, it takes a long time to build up, you know, the experience and relevance within the industry. You know, we are literally on step one. We know the journey that we want to go on. But everybody needs to understand it isn't going to happen overnight, but working together, it can happen quite quickly.
And why is there the demand, Nick? People are asking, you know, there are lots of stories about studios being built in other places. Why is there the demand in the UK for this particular industry?
So the UK has long been recognised as a centre of excellence, predominantly behind the camera. You know, the UK has always had fantastic skills, and whilst the headlines and whilst the finance by and large comes from America, so you'll be aware of, you know, let's just pick a studio, so Paramount Studios, you know, they put up a lot of the finance, and they would, in theory, make films in the United States, but actually we have better talent here in terms of production. And the other reason is actually America is now so heavily unionized in the film industry that it's actually cheaper as well, with exchange rates, for Americans to come into the UK to make their productions. So, and this isn't just a recent thing, this has been growing over the past 10 to 15 years, but it really has now reached a crescendo, driven by the likes of Netflix and Amazon. But also there are things on the radar that maybe some people aren't even aware of yet, like HBO Max is coming to the screen. Comcast are bringing their own online streaming service called Peacock in a year or so. And all of these need to create vast amounts of content to attract people's attention. So, you know, historically, I mean, if you went back a decade, everything was about film and nobody really wanted to talk about television. And when you looked at blockbuster films, and you could take a blockbuster film to be, you know, a James Bond film, for example, is a blockbuster film. Now, the studios effectively collaborated amongst themselves and said, well, look, there are 52 weeks in a year, so we should really make no more than 52 blockbusters a year. And that was sort of how it went until Netflix came along and really shook the market up. And because of the way they're creating and streaming content, and because the way people want to consume content, you don't want to go to the cinema anymore to get that experience, but you're happy to be able to watch, every single episode of Game of Thrones, which is a theatrical experience, but I can watch every single episode if I want over an entire weekend and never have to leave the house. It's just the way content is being consumed has just changed the face of everything, and streaming has got faster, and therefore more people have come. And really, the production content and the creation of content has more than doubled in just the past 5 or 6 years. And as I say, people want to come to the UK because it's recognised that we have the best production teams in the world working on it. And that's why if we can get more training opportunities locally at Shinfield, people will be learning off the best in the world, and they will therefore become the best in the world. And the whole industry will continue in the UK, and certainly we hope at Shinfield. Probably spoke far too long there.
It's brilliant. Can we ask a question about construction, please? Someone's asking us here in terms of the construction phase and what we can say about the construction plan and how construction traffic will be managed, but also the timeframes that we're talking about across the thought of not just the temporary application, but the proposal. What are the sort of timeframes we're talking about?
Who are you directing that one to?
You could pick that one up. Nick, do you want to pick that one up, or Nick Patterson, Neil? In terms of the construction, how are we going to manage construction, and how are the construction traffic going to be managed on site? And then separately, sort of the timeframes involved in construction.
Okay, so we have some very experienced project managers on our team that, and health and safety, as everyone knows, is absolutely paramount for this scheme. So in the very short term, construction will be happening by the end of this month and continue really through till September. Then on the main scheme, as we've noted, we're looking to submit a planning application this spring, with hopefully the ability to start construction in about 12 months. And again, everything will be managed as efficiently as possible to cause as least disruption locally as possible. Nick Patterson, Neil, I don't know if there's any more specific detail that you want to add to that.
Only that the construction traffic, as the eventual traffic when it's in operation, will of course come through the science park, which I think Peter Jones mentioned earlier on. So that's the routing and the direction in which activity will arrive at the site, and that will be subject to a construction environmental management plan, which has been submitted as part of and supporting the planning application. So that's something that obviously is something which is always carefully considered for any development project.
Nick, it's Peter Jones here from ALP. I've been scanning through the questions, and I think I've picked up the specific question that relates to this point that was asked. And I just want to reiterate what Nick Patterson-Neils has just said, but specifically the works that are being done for the British Museum did promote some physical measures that would eventually prevent traffic travelling, continuing along Cutbush Lane East, and basically so it is forced to route through the science park. I just want to confirm that very much remains the case, and it's the last phase of the work that will be implemented as part of the British Museum, which of course is separate to this project. But just to confirm that the construction traffic as well as the operational traffic will be routing through the science park, and when the current works are complete for the British Museum, they will have no choice but to. So it will be, it's not a matter of needing it to be enforced, because it will be physically enforced on the ground.
And can we just cover off, Nick Patterson-Neil, in terms of some of the questions around, the heights of the buildings in relationship to the landscaping? Again, those visual montages you were saying earlier on in the presentation, I think that's an important point just to cover off a number of questions around that.
Yeah, they're very helpful. So in broad terms, the height of the stages at their highest point is around 17.5 meters, and the workshops are much smaller. They're in the region of 10.5 meters in height. The photo montages, I think, are very helpful. They are what's called verified views. So a survey company has gone out on site, has taken photographs in specific locations, and then has matched that up digitally with the information which the architect team has created, a digital model of the building, so that they depict something which is very precise based on topographical information. So we know exactly the relationship of those buildings and structures as they are shown relative to the existing landscape that is on the site and surrounding the site. And there is a strong landscape context around the site, notably obviously the trees which surround the margins of the site itself, but also beyond that there are a series of copses and layered layering of tree cover and so on in the surrounding landscape down towards the River Loddon, which provides a very effective way to assimilate the development into that surrounding area. So that gives a bit more detail about the heights. And as I say, there's a very detailed landscape and visual appraisal, which the council has, of course, requested to support the planning application quite rightly, where that is all considered.
Can we just cover off also elements of parking on site? We've talked about buses and cycles and such, but just parking is also been.
Yeah, that's probably one for Peter.
Peter?
Just thank you. Just yeah. In terms of the parking, the approach we've taken is to actually look at the actual parking accumulation that has been observed in other studio developers in the area. So moving away from theoretical modelling and just picking up exactly what is occurring at other sites, including Pinewood and Shepperton, and making some robust assumptions in terms of or allowances on top of that, just to account for the fact that just to reflect the situation that we're in terms of the locality compared to them other developments. So we are identifying parking provision within the southern parcel as part of the temporary application. As I say, it's within line or slightly higher than the provision that's in place at other studio developments in the area, at Pinewood and Shepperton, and that level of parking would be reflected as part of the main application for the full development proposals that is currently being drawn up as well. So we're reasonably confident that we can accommodate the parking demand on the site, which is obviously an important consideration, because we clearly can't have people parking off-site along the local road. So there is sufficient parking that we are confident that we can accommodate within the confines of the development itself.
And if I can just add to that, I think I mentioned that we will be utilising the existing Gateway 1 building, and therefore most of the parking associated with that is already been established in the car park at the Science Park site. So it currently exists, and a lot of that will be utilised by the production, with the balance we've allowed for on the southern field.
One good question I think it's come through is, am I likely to bump into a famous person? How will I get to meet the film actors?
I mean, that is a difficult one. Obviously, they are very secretive. They come in. So some of them do tend to walk around, but the majority of them want to come in and be fairly anonymous. They're in probably the zone that they need to attend for that day, and they're very much focused on what they're doing. It is a job for them, and they do turn up, and they'll get whisked through security, and they'll go onto the sound stage. Yes, there are instances where people are quite happy to mingle, but that's not really within our gift. But if a local actor decides he wants to go down to the local hostelry and have a drink, he very well might do that. It has been known.
That's good. In terms of finally just picking up at the points about better information going forward from here, is there a newsletter that we can sign up to be kept informed? It is our intention to continue a conversation with residents. This is not the end of the consultation at all. We wanted to inform you of what had happened with regard to the temporary application, because that's important. That kickstarts the whole thing. But from here on in, there's a conversation we want to have with people. And so there will be newsletter opportunities to engage. Of course, lockdown has made a difference to the way we engage at the moment, hence the mail shot to you, hence doing this online rather than in person in the village hall. And that will change, hopefully, as lockdown is eased and we have the opportunity to do different things. But there will be more communication than this to keep in touch with people. It is important to us. Lockdown and COVID has not made it easy to do public engagement, but we are doing it and we are reaching out and we want a genuine conversation with you. And as I say, we're very grateful to those groups and stakeholders, for example, the parish council, who engage with us and are supportive of the applications, because that's important to us to have this relationship. This is about building a long-term relationship with you. And so, yes, in terms of future engagement and future consultation and future dialogue and answering questions, this is very much a part of what we want to do, to give you confidence in what we are doing and what Shinfield Studios can and will become. So that's an important point to bear in mind. And you can support us. You can support the studios by logging on to the link at the bottom here that we'll send the presentation out to. But if you want to email me, as you've emailed me to get the registration for this event, we can supply you with the contact details to then write that supportive comment that will be very, very helpful to us in getting the application positively seen by the council, and then starting this journey that we're all on together for the benefit of the community with jobs and investment. So yes, I mean, please get in touch with us. Please keep the conversation going, keep your questions coming, and we will be happy to engage with you. And please support us, because it is important. And you can do that, as I say, by writing, emailing the address here to me, or the link that we'll send through to anybody that asks for it. Or when we send around the presentation to you, you will see that you can copy and paste that link into your browser that will take you to the web page on the council's website where you can leave a comment in support, and that hopefully will link and work for you. Can I thank everybody this evening? But lots of individual questions that we'll come back to, particularly around the points around transport and around the issues around jobs and employment. That's important. As I say, this is the start of it. Nick and Ian, would you like to say anything finally before we begin to finish this evening?
I think thank you everyone for attending this evening, and we will hopefully meet some of you in the very near future, and we will get back to you with the questions that you've asked as quickly as we can. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Telephone number is on there if anybody has anything urgent they wanted to raise with us. The studio's website is here that you can go and have a look at the details. We will have definitely have, as I say, future correspondence with you in terms of putting out the information and so an area. And this is within the Shinfield Parish area that we've communicated with at the moment within the Wokingham District Council. So we will be reaching out beyond that as well. That's important to us. But thank you for your attendance this evening, and we do hope you found this useful and informative. And thank you for being with us this evening. I will now bring the presentation to a close.